For the entirety of today's episode, we're going to be discussing credit cards. But before we do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to the HopeFilled Financial Podcast. We publish a brand new episode every Tuesday. I also want to let you know about a project that I've been working on this week. By the time this episode comes out, it should be live on the website, and if it isn't quite yet, it should be out any day. This project is a marriage enrichment workshop that could be offered by your local church. It's called Your Marriage, God's Word, and Money. This workbook embodies months and months of research and dedicated work in order to put together the single most effective marriage enrichment workshop to teach you and your spouse about God's will for you and your money. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, please tell your local church about us. On our website, there will be a link for your church to get started in setting up one of these workshops in the near future. You're not here, though, to hear about the marriage enrichment workshop. You're here to hear about credit cards. That's today's main topic. This episode could very well be called Confessions of a Financial Coach. When I was homeschooled, I went through Dave Ramsey's curriculum for personal finance. I think it's called Foundations in Personal Finance or something like that. This curriculum set me up to believe firmly from that point forward that credit cards were not my friend. Almost all of you listening have certainly heard of Dave Ramsey, and Dave Ramsey's disdain for credit cards is most certainly public. I maintained the position that credit cards were something that I would never get into up until I was close to graduating. I was getting ready to move to the Salt Lake City area for my very first job as an architectural engineer. I knew when I was looking to move out that the real estate market in Utah was hot, and it was projected to grow even hotter over the next 10 years. Even though I didn't have too terribly much for a down payment, I knew it was going to be economically responsible for me to get into home ownership as soon as possible. The problem I ran into right here is the only hole where Dave Ramsey's manual underwriting does not work if you've been responsible with money. I especially didn't have a work history that reflected the new salary I was going to make as an engineer in training. Dave Ramsey promotes Churchill Mortgage as a lender who utilizes manual underwriting for those of his followers who do not have a credit card. If you become debt-free and you don't have credit cards, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have anything in the way of debt, your credit score in short order becomes indeterminable. This is when manual underwriting is the only way that you can get a mortgage. Unfortunately, I didn't have what it took to make manual underwriting successful, not by my own fault and not by anything that I could have really done differently. It was just by the nature of where I was in life. Churchill Mortgage themselves told me the only way that I could get a mortgage is if I got a couple credit cards. I built up my credit quickly over the next few weeks and called them back and got a mortgage through the traditional route. This was my only avenue to become a homeowner right after graduating. The alternative path would have been to rent for a little while and build up that income history so that I could qualify properly for manual underwriting. But I wanted to be a homeowner. I didn't have the patience, so I broke down and got my first 2 credit cards. And it did indeed work. I used the credit cards just to fill up gas for a short while. I got a credit score that populated, and it was one that was good enough for me to get a mortgage. I ended up buying a 1,400 square foot condo in Bountiful, Utah. It was a wonderful first property, and it served me really well for 4 whole years. Right after moving out to Utah and getting the home, I ended up, because I had the credit cards, missing a month or 2 of budgeting. I remember going out with friends from the office, and we would go out and eat for lunch. Sometimes we would get dinner. That first month, I was not only skipping my budget, but I was putting everything on a credit card. I ended up spending $800 on food just for me. And it was because I, A, wasn't running a budget, and B, was using a credit card. I wasn't even registering how much money I was spending while I was spending it. That's what credit cards are excellent at getting you to do. While we were engaged, my wife and I got a credit card that we shared in order to pay for wedding expenses. Since I was in the credit card game anyway, might as well jump on this one and get the free airline miles so that I could fly out and visit. You see, we were engaged long distance. We were 1,000 miles apart as the crow flies, and I would make it my number one priority to fly out at least once a month to visit her. Fortunately, we had enough friends who were getting married back in Kansas. We basically made going to a wedding a monthly date. I think we had at least 4 or 5 active credit cards between us, and we had a couple more that were just sitting in a drawer not doing anything. As you know, I am passionate about budgeting, especially in marriage. Naturally, I needed a budgeting tool that was going to be able to draw from all the transactions from all these different cards and the checking account and organize them in such a way that I could track my expenditures in each and every category accurately throughout all these different accounts. The process was cumbersome. I spent weeks building this super spreadsheet, and I had like multiple legends in it where you could input the expenditures from up to like 25 cards. Heaven forbid we ever had that many. I wanted to future-proof this thing. But it took a lot of work, and that spreadsheet was complicated. And I know complicated spreadsheets. I've made so many. Now, even though I had a spreadsheet that was designed to take all these different inputs from all these different sources, all these different accounts and cards, it still didn't make reconciling the budget and putting in the different transactions any faster. It still took a great deal of time to get everything organized, and it would take forever if I needed to track down a particular expenditure. I remember sitting down in budget meetings with Amanda, and I would pull up one legend from one credit card, and we'd be sifting through looking for the particular transaction for one particular category, and we couldn't find it. Well, it was in the one over, and when we filtered out on that, it would hide the transaction we were looking for in the adjacent ledger for another credit card just off screen from where we were looking. So budgeting with credit cards was not working out very well. It was just simply too complicated, and it was taking significantly longer than I would want a regular budget meeting to take. We ended up basically taking all of our credit cards and putting them away. We just simply stopped using them, and we only used the debit card just to test drive budgeting with only one account. It went so much better. Not only were things easier to track, and I could actually go throughout the month and easily pull transactions and keep the budget up to date so that we could know where we were in the budget. But if I needed to find transactions later, as we're reconciling things, it was all in one simple ledger that the budget was referencing, not up to 25 ledgers, one ledger. Simplifying this process made budgeting so nice. Our budget meetings, after I would draft a budget for us to review, could take as little as 15 minutes. Amanda and I actually just had our budget meeting for March today, and it was something that we were able to casually just walk into after lunch. Hey, I got the budget ready to go. Do you want to check it out? We went through it. It was simple. It was fast. It was easy. And it's been that way ever since we stopped using credit cards. We held on to the credit cards for a little bit of time, just enough time for us to start hosting a Financial Peace University class at our local church in Bountiful. Shout out to St. Olaf's Catholic Church and Father Andrew for letting us facilitate Financial Peace University. In Financial Peace University, there's a part of the class, a part of the debt lesson, where they have you cut up credit cards. And if you're brave enough, cut up credit cards in the class. The facilitator is asked to bring scissors. And if they have any credit cards, cut them up there. So I ended up bringing our credit cards and cutting them up there in front of the class as an act of inspiring them. We closed the credit card accounts later that next day, and we've never gone back to touching them. I want to add, Amanda and I never, ever carried a balance from one month into the next month. We always paid off our credit card balances because the amount of interest that they could have charged on some of those cards exceeded 28%. It was insane. And there's no way that we could build wealth and get ahead if we were paying that amount of interest on any balance that was carried month to month. And that basically entails my entire personal experience with credit cards.